Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of history's most captivating mysteries, Atlantis. But what if I told you that our entire search for a lost continent, for a physical place beneath the waves, is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of its origin story? What if Atlantis was never meant to be found? To get to the heart of it, we need to travel back in time, not with submarines, but with books. We need to go to ancient Athens, around 360 BC. To the mind of one of history's greatest thinkers, Plato. This is where Atlantis was born, not in a cataclysm of earth and water, but as a philosophical tale within two of his dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias. That's right, the very first mention of Atlantis isn't a historical record or a sailor's log. It's a story told by a philosopher. In Plato's narrative, Atlantis wasn't just some island. It was a legendary naval power, a marvel of engineering and wealth located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar. He described a city of concentric rings of land and water, with magnificent temples adorned with exotic metals, a powerful military, and a society that seemed to have everything. For 10 generations, the Atlanteans lived in virtue and wisdom, their divine nature holding strong. They valued goodness above their vast riches. But this utopian vision had a dark side. Plato tells us that over time, the divine part of their nature weakened, diluted by their mortal side. Greed, arrogance, and an insatiable lust for power began to consume them. Their virtue faded, replaced by what Plato called shameful avarice. They were no longer content with their paradise. They wanted to conquer the world. They launched an unprovoked attack against Athens and the rest of the known world. This is the crucial part of the story. Plato didn't invent Atlantis to give us a treasure map. He created it as a cautionary tale, a mirror to hold up to his own society and to all societies. Atlantis was the ultimate what-if scenario. What if a civilization achieved unparalleled technological and material success but lost its moral compass? What happens when ambition is untethered from wisdom? The antagonist in Plato's story isn't a natural disaster. It's human hubris. The people of Atlantis, blessed with every advantage, fell because they became corrupt. Their society, despite its advanced engineering and military might, was rotten from the inside. They believed their power made them invincible, superior to others, and even superior to the gods. They were a society that had mastered the world around them but failed to master themselves. And how does the story end? In a single terrible day and night. After their failed invasion of Athens, the gods, led by Zeus, decided to punish the Atlanteans for their arrogance. Plato writes of violent earthquakes and floods, and in that single dreadful day, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. The end was swift, total, and final. It wasn't a slow decline, it was a sudden catastrophic judgment. So the sinking of Atlantis wasn't just a geological event in the story. It was a moral one. It was the direct consequence of their spiritual decay. Plato's message was crystal clear. No amount of technological prowess or material wealth can save a civilization from moral collapse. In fact, without a strong ethical foundation, those very strengths can accelerate its downfall. The fall of Atlantis serves as one of the earliest and most powerful warnings in Western literature about the dangers of progress without wisdom. Now, why has this story captivated humanity for over 2 millennia? Why do we keep searching for a physical place that was likely never real to begin with? It's because the myth of Atlantis speaks to one of our deepest, most primal fears. The fear that our own civilization, with all its achievements and complexities, is fragile. The fear that we too could fall. Every generation sees its own reflection in the story. We look at our incredible technological advancements, our global interconnectedness, our immense power, and then we look at our problems, our conflicts, our environmental challenges, our social divisions, and we can't help but wonder, are we becoming like the Atlanteans? Are we letting our ambition and our desires outpace our wisdom? The story endures because it's not just about a lost city. It's about a lost ideal. It is a constant reminder that true greatness isn't measured by the height of our buildings or the power of our weapons, but by the strength of our character. It's about the eternal struggle between our better angels and our inner demons. A struggle that plays out not just in individuals, but across entire civilizations. Think about it. We are constantly pushing the boundaries of science and technology. We can communicate instantly across the globe. We are exploring the stars, and we are unlocking the very secrets of life itself. We are, in many ways, living in an age that would seem magical to the ancients. But Plato's tale forces us to ask the hard questions. As we build our modern Atlantis, are we also cultivating the wisdom, the humility, and the moral integrity to sustain it? Or are we too being seduced by power and forgetting the virtues that truly matter? The search for Atlantis, then, becomes more than a hunt for underwater ruins. It's a search for ourselves. It's an exploration of our own potential for greatness and our capacity for self-destruction. The legend is a timeless piece of human heritage, a philosophical anchor reminding us that the most important foundations of any society are not made of stone or metal, but of virtue, justice, and humility. So the next time you hear about Atlantis, don't just picture a sunken city. Picture Plato sitting in ancient Athens, crafting a powerful allegory about the human condition. A story that warns us that the greatest threat to any civilization comes not from external enemies or natural disasters, but from within. The real voyage isn't to the bottom of the ocean, but into the heart of what it means to be human and how we can build a future that lasts. Have you ever wondered if the legend of Atlantis is more than just a myth? For centuries, this story of a magnificent island civilization swallowed by the sea in a single day and night has captivated our imagination. Plato gave us the first account, a tale of a utopian society with advanced technology and wisdom, a naval power that reigned over a vast empire. But what if the story of Atlantis isn't about one single place, but a memory of a world lost to time, a world before the Great Flood? Let's dive into the connection between Atlantis and water. Almost every version of the story emphasizes a cataclysmic flood. Plato describes violent earthquakes and floods that caused Atlantis to sink beneath the waves. This isn't just an isolated detail. It's the core of the legend. This powerful imagery of a civilization being wiped out by the ocean has echoed through history, making us ask, could such an event have actually happened? The idea of a world-altering flood isn't unique to Atlantis. In fact, it's one of the most common themes in global mythology. From Noah's Ark in the Judeo-Christian tradition to the story of Manu in Hindu texts, and the Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, cultures all over the world have stories of a great deluge. The Australian Aboriginals, the indigenous peoples of the Americas, and ancient Chinese legends all speak of a time when the world was consumed by water. Could these stories be independent inventions? Or are they fragmented memories, cultural echoes of a real, shared environmental trauma that affected early human societies on a global scale? To understand this, we need to travel back in time, not just a few thousand years, but to the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago. This was a period of dramatic climate change. As the massive ice sheets that covered much of the northern hemisphere began to melt, they released unimaginable quantities of water into the oceans. The result was a rapid and significant rise in global sea levels. Over several thousand years, sea levels rose by more than 120 meters, or nearly 400 feet. Imagine the world back then. Where do humans like to live? Near the coast, of course. The coastlines provided abundant resources: food from the sea, fertile land for early agriculture, and easy routes for trade and travel. The most advanced and populated settlements of the late Stone Age would have naturally been located along these now submerged coastlines. As the waters rose, these communities would have been forced to retreat. Their villages, their hunting grounds, their sacred sites, all of it would have been slowly, relentlessly claimed by the sea. Think about the scale of this. An area of landmass larger than the United States was lost to the rising oceans. Entire landscapes, complete with their inhabitants and cultures, simply vanished from the map. For the people living through this, it must have felt like the end of the world. They would have passed down stories of the disaster, tales of a lost homeland, a paradise drowned beneath the waves. Over generations, these memories would have transformed into myths, the specifics lost but the core trauma remaining. This brings us to a fascinating possibility. What if Atlantis wasn't a single, monolithic city-state as Plato described? What if Atlantis is a composite memory? A name we give to the countless real, forgotten coastal civilizations that were erased by the rising seas at the end of the Ice Age? Plato's story might be the most famous version, but it could be drawing from a much older, more universal tradition of flood survival stories. The concentric rings of land and water he described could be a stylized representation of a sophisticated coastal or island culture with advanced knowledge of canals and waterways. We often think of history in terms of what we can dig up: stone ruins, pottery, tools. But these rising waters would have destroyed more than just buildings. They would have destroyed knowledge. Imagine an advanced coastal society that had mastered navigation, astronomy, and marine engineering. Their wisdom would have been deeply tied to their environment. When that environment was destroyed, so was the context for their knowledge. This is a crucial point. Human knowledge can disappear much faster than physical structures. A library can burn down. A tradition can be forgotten in a few generations if the elders who hold that knowledge perish. The survivors of these coastal cataclysms would have been refugees, scattered and traumatized. Their primary focus would have been survival, not the preservation of their entire cultural database. The intricate details of their science, their philosophy, their history, much of it would have been lost, surviving only as fragmented legends. So when we search for a single geographical location for Atlantis, we might be missing the bigger picture. We're looking for a needle in a haystack, but maybe the haystack itself is the story. The real Atlantis might be scattered across the continental shelves of the world, hidden beneath hundreds of feet of water. Underwater archaeology is a relatively new and incredibly difficult field, but it has already uncovered submerged prehistoric sites off the coasts of India, Japan, and in the Mediterranean. These discoveries prove that sophisticated human settlements existed on land that is now deep underwater. Could one of these be the real Atlantis? Perhaps. But it's more likely that they are all pieces of the puzzle. Each submerged settlement is a testament to this lost world. The story of Atlantis serves as a powerful symbol for this forgotten chapter of human history. It reminds us that our civilization is built on the foundation of countless others that came before, many of which we have no written record of. The allure of Atlantis, then, is not just about finding a sunken city of gold. It's about recovering a lost part of ourselves, our collective human story. It's the recognition that our history is deeper and more mysterious than we often think. The end of the Ice Age was not just a geological event. It was a human drama on a planetary scale. The flood myths are the scripts from that drama, and Atlantis is its most enduring star. By looking at the legend through the lens of geology and archaeology, we don't diminish its power. We enhance it. We move it from the realm of pure fantasy into the realm of plausible history. The story of Atlantis becomes a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of civilization in the face of nature's power. It challenges us to look beneath the surface, both literally and figuratively, to find the truth about our own past. So is Atlantis real? Maybe not in the way Plato described a single island empire, but as a symbol for a lost world of coastal civilizations swallowed by the sea, a world whose memory survives in myths and legends around the globe. In that sense, Atlantis is very real indeed. It's a ghost haunting our collective subconscious, a whisper from a drowned world, urging us to remember what we have forgotten. Have you ever wondered about Atlantis? That legendary city, swallowed by the sea, taking its secrets with it. For centuries, we've treated it as a myth, a fairy tale Plato told. But what if the story of Atlantis isn't just about a sunken city? What if it's a chilling reminder of something we've desperately tried to forget? That human progress isn't a straight line, and that everything we've built, all our incredible technology, could simply vanish. The tale of Atlantis speaks to a deep-seated anxiety we all share, the fear of lost knowledge. Imagine a civilization so advanced, so brilliant, that its achievements would make our own look primitive. Plato described Atlantis as a marvel of engineering, a city of concentric rings of land and water, with incredible temples, advanced metallurgy, and a powerful navy. He claimed they had technology we can barely comprehend. Sounds like science fiction, right? But the more we learn about our own history, the less fantastical it seems. We have this modern arrogance, this belief that we are the pinnacle of human achievement. We look back at ancient civilizations and see primitive people with simple tools. But that picture is fundamentally wrong. Take the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek analog computer discovered in a shipwreck. This device, over 2,000 years old, could predict astronomical positions and eclipses with a precision that wasn't matched for another 1,000 years. When it was first found, experts were baffled. It was too complex, too sophisticated, it simply shouldn't have existed. But it did, and it's not just the Antikythera mechanism. All over the world, we find evidence of ancient genius that defies our expectations. The intricate stonework of Pumapunku in Bolivia, cut with laser-like precision. The mysterious Baghdad battery, which might have been a form of ancient electroplating. The dendrolite, an Egyptian carving that looks eerily like a giant light bulb. Each of these discoveries chips away at our comfortable narrative of linear progress. They suggest that ancient people weren't just stacking stones. They were innovators, scientists, and engineers whose knowledge has been almost completely lost. This is where the story of Atlantis becomes so terrifyingly relevant. Plato says Atlantis was destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune, a cataclysm that wiped it off the face of the earth. We often think of such collapses in terms of natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. And those certainly play a part. The Minoan civilization on Crete, for example, was devastated by the eruption of Thera, an event some scholars link to the Atlantis legend. An entire society, with its art, its language, and its technology, was brought to its knees in an instant. But disasters aren't the only way to lose a world. Social and political collapse can be just as destructive. When the Roman Empire fell, Europe plunged into the Dark Ages. The engineering marvels of Rome, the aqueducts, the concrete, the heated floors became mysteries. Skills that were commonplace for centuries disappeared. It took 1,000 years for Europe to regain the level of technological sophistication that Rome had possessed. The knowledge wasn't destroyed in a single cataclysm, but it was lost all the same. It vanished because the social structures that supported it, the schools, the workshops, the libraries, the stable economy crumbled. Think about our own world. How many of us truly understand the technology we use every day? Your smartphone is a miracle of modern engineering, but how many people could build one from scratch? Our knowledge is highly specialized. We have experts who understand one tiny piece of the puzzle, but very few who see the whole picture. Our entire civilization rests on a fragile network of interconnected expertise. If that network breaks, if the systems that allow for the transfer of knowledge from one generation to the next fail, how quickly would we lose it all? The knowledge of how to build a nuclear reactor, a GPS satellite, or a computer chip isn't written in our DNA. It's learned, it's passed down. And that process can be interrupted. A pandemic, a global war, an economic depression, an environmental collapse, any of these could trigger a chain reaction. Supply chains would break. Universities would close. Experts would perish or be scattered. Within a generation or two, the most advanced knowledge we possess could become little more than a garbled legend. We would become like the survivors of the Roman Empire, wandering through the ruins of a forgotten age, unable to comprehend how our ancestors built such wonders. This is the true horror of the Atlantis story. It's not about a lost city of gold beneath the waves. It's about the fragility of civilization itself. Atlantis is a symbol of our own potential for self-destruction and amnesia. It represents the terrifying idea that humanity can reach incredible heights of intelligence and creativity only to have it all erased. It's a warning that progress is not guaranteed. It is something that must be constantly maintained, protected, and passed on. We are, in a way, living in our own Atlantis right now. We are a civilization of incredible technological power, but we are also perched on a knife's edge. We face challenges: climate change, political instability, resource depletion that could easily send us spiraling into a new dark age. The story of Atlantis asks us a critical question. Are we wise enough to preserve our knowledge? Or are we destined to become another forgotten legend, another mystery for a future civilization to puzzle over? The idea that advanced civilizations could have existed and vanished before us is a humbling one. It forces us to reconsider our place in history. We aren't the end of the story. We are just one chapter. And like the chapters before us, our story could end abruptly, our achievements buried under the sands of time. The legend of Atlantis persists not because we want to find treasure, but because we are terrified of becoming the treasure that can't be found. We are haunted by the ghost of our own forgotten potential. So the next time you hear the name Atlantis, don't just think of a fantasy island. Think of the Antikythera mechanism. Think of the fall of Rome. Think of all the lost libraries and forgotten skills throughout history. Atlantis is a mirror, reflecting our deepest fear, that the brightest light of human ingenuity can be extinguished, and that we too could be lost to the darkness. The technology we were never meant to find might not be from aliens or gods. It might have been our own, waiting to be rediscovered. Have you ever wondered about Atlantis? Not just the city of gold and advanced tech sinking beneath the waves, but the real story, the one that's less about a natural disaster and more about a psychological one. Plato's tale isn't just a fantasy. It's a profound warning. It tells us that Atlantis didn't just collapse physically. It rotted from the inside out first. This is the story of how a civilization can die long before its final moments and what that means for us today. Let's rewind the clock. According to Plato's dialogues, Atlantis was once a marvel. It was a civilization founded by beings who were part god, part human, a society built on principles of wisdom, virtue, and harmony. For generations, the Atlanteans lived in balance. They respected the laws, valued community over individual gain, and understood their role as stewards of their magnificent island. They weren't just technologically advanced. They were spiritually and morally advanced. They saw their wealth and power not as tools for conquest, but as a responsibility. This was their golden age, a time when their inner world perfectly mirrored the beauty and order of their outer world. But something shifted, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. The divine part of their nature began to fade, diluted over generations. The human part, with all its frailties, began to take over. What started as a society of philosopher kings devolved into one ruled by ambition and avarice. The virtues that made them great, humility, balance, and collective responsibility, were replaced by their dark opposites: pride, excess, and an insatiable hunger for more. This is the crux of the story. The moral collapse preceded the physical one. Before the earthquakes and floods, there was a spiritual earthquake, a moral flood that swept away their foundations. Greed became their new god. They were no longer content with their paradise island. They began to look outward, not with a hand of friendship, but with the fist of a conqueror. Their goals shifted from maintaining balance to achieving total domination. Plato tells us they sought to enslave the lands around the Mediterranean. Their incredible technology, once used for creation and sustenance, was repurposed for war and subjugation. Imagine that transition. The very soul of the nation was corrupted. The pursuit of wealth replaced the pursuit of wisdom. The desire for power eclipsed the need for justice. They became obsessed with material possessions, with status, with overpowering their neighbors. They lost their way completely. And in doing so, they sealed their own fate. The gods, seeing this corruption, decided that this once great civilization was no longer worthy of its existence. And so, in a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. Now it's easy to dismiss this as just a myth, a dramatic story. But what if it's a blueprint? A psychological blueprint for how any civilization falls. Think about it. Civilizational collapse isn't usually a sudden, explosive event like in a disaster movie. It's more like a chronic illness. It unfolds slowly, quietly, over decades or even centuries. The symptoms are often invisible to those living through them. It's a gradual erosion of values, a slow decay of institutions, a creeping apathy among the populace. One of the most dangerous traps for any successful society is the illusion of permanence. When a civilization experiences a long period of stability, peace, and prosperity, it can create a dangerous kind of blindness. We start to believe that this is the natural state of things, that our way of life is indestructible. We get comfortable. We become complacent. This long peace lulls us into a false sense of security, making us unable to see the real threats when they emerge. We might worry about external threats, asteroids, supervolcanoes, invading armies. But Plato's story of Atlantis tells us something far more chilling. The greatest danger is almost always internal. The real enemy isn't a force of nature or a foreign power. It's us. It's the decay of our own character, the loss of our own principles. It's the slow poisoning of the well from which our society drinks. When a society starts prioritizing short-term gains over long-term sustainability, when it values individual profit over collective well-being, when it celebrates celebrity over character, and when it replaces critical thought with blind ideology, it is walking the path of Atlantis. The cracks are already forming in the foundation, even if the glittering towers still stand tall. This internal rot happens in stages. First, the truth becomes flexible. People and leaders start to say what is convenient, not what is true. Facts become debatable, and personal opinions are given the same weight as evidence. Sound familiar? Next, the sense of shared responsibility withers. The idea that we all in this together is replaced by every person for themselves. Empathy becomes a weakness, and selfishness is rebranded as strength. The social fabric begins to unravel thread by thread. Then the institutions that are supposed to uphold justice and order become corrupted. They start serving the powerful instead of the people. Laws are bent for the wealthy, and justice becomes a commodity to be bought and sold. When people lose faith in their institutions, in their government, their courts, their media, they lose faith in the society itself. This is a critical stage of decline. Look around our world today. Can we see echoes of Atlantis? We live in an age of unprecedented technological power. We can communicate instantly across the globe, we have access to all of human knowledge in our pockets, and we've unlocked secrets of the universe our ancestors couldn't even dream of. We are, in many ways, living in a golden age, but are we wise? Are we balanced? As our technological power grows, has our moral wisdom grown with it? Or are we like the later Atlanteans, using our incredible gifts not for unity and progress, but for division, control, and personal enrichment? We see nations driven by insatiable appetites for resources. We see social platforms designed to connect us being used to tear us apart. We see a culture that often values wealth and fame above all else, no matter how it's acquired. The story of Atlantis forces us to ask some uncomfortable questions. Are we becoming blinded by our own success? Are we so comfortable in our stability that we can't see the systemic rot happening right under our noses? The slow creep of division, the erosion of trust, the celebration of greed, these aren't just headlines. They are symptoms. They are the early tremors of a potential moral earthquake. The final lesson from Atlantis is perhaps the most important one. The destruction of the city was not a punishment in the simple sense. It was a consequence. It was the natural, inevitable outcome of a society that had lost its soul. The ocean didn't destroy Atlantis. Atlantis destroyed itself. The ocean just finished the job. This isn't a message of doom and gloom. It's a message of warning, but also of hope. Because unlike the Atlanteans in the story, we have the story itself. We have the historical records of countless other civilizations that rose and fell. We have the ability to see the patterns, to recognize the symptoms of internal decay. The choice is ours. We can ignore the warning signs, continue down the path of division and self-interest, and wait for the metaphorical waves to crash over us. Or we can choose a different path. We can remember the principles that make a society truly great: empathy, integrity, justice, and a sense of shared responsibility. We can use our incredible technology to build bridges, not walls. We can prioritize the long-term health of our planet and our communities over short-term profits. We can demand more from our leaders and more from ourselves. We can fight the internal decay before it becomes terminal. The fall of Atlantis is not a prophecy written in stone. It's a mirror. It reflects our own potential for greatness and our own capacity for self-destruction. What we see in that reflection and what we do about it will determine the future of our own civilization. Will we be remembered as another lost paradise that crumbled under the weight of its own hubris? Or will we be the ones who saw the warning, learned the lesson, and steered our ship away from the abyss? The story of our world is still being written, and we are all holding the pen. Ever wondered why we're still obsessed with Atlantis? We've mapped the ocean floor, sent rovers to Mars, yet this mythical lost city still lives rent-free in our heads. Why, it's simple really. The story of Atlantis has never been solved. There's no definitive shipwreck, no GPS coordinates, no ancient ruins we can point to and say, there it is, and it's this very mystery, this giant, ocean-sized question mark, that keeps us coming back for more. The tale began with the Greek philosopher Plato, who wrote about a mighty island nation that sank into the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. He described it as a utopia, a marvel of engineering and social harmony, a paradise on earth, but then pride and greed took over. The Atlanteans, once noble, became corrupt and power-hungry. They waged war against Athens, and for their hubris, the gods punished them, wiping their magnificent civilization off the map. Was Plato telling a true story? Was it a cautionary tale, a political allegory meant to warn his fellow Athenians? We just don't know. And because we don't know, Atlantis has become a blank canvas. For over 2,000 years, people have projected their own hopes, fears, and wildest dreams onto this sunken kingdom. It's not just a story. It's a mirror reflecting the anxieties of every generation that rediscovers it. Take the 19th century, for example. An American congressman named Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. In an age of explosive scientific discovery and colonialism, Donnelly reimagined Atlantis not just as a lost city, but as the mother of all civilizations. He claimed that survivors of the cataclysm spread across the globe, bringing agriculture, metallurgy, and language to ancient Egypt, the Mayans, and everyone in between. He essentially used Atlantis to explain the origins of all human progress, tying it into the era's fascination with a single common origin for humanity. It was a grand, unified theory for a world grappling with its own complex history. Then the early 20th century arrived, bringing with it a wave of spiritualism and mysticism. People were searching for deeper meaning beyond the material world, and Atlantis was a perfect vessel. Famous psychics like Edgar Cayce claimed to have visions of the lost continent. He described Atlanteans as an advanced spiritual race who wielded incredible psychic powers and used mysterious energy crystals. In his telling, their downfall wasn't just about military aggression. It was a spiritual failure, a misuse of cosmic power. This version of Atlantis resonated deeply with an audience yearning for esoteric wisdom and a connection to a forgotten, more enlightened past. Fast forward to the Cold War era. The world was living under the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. Suddenly, the story of a civilization destroying itself overnight with unimaginable power didn't seem so mythical anymore. Atlantis became a chilling metaphor for nuclear Armageddon. The idea of a society so advanced that it engineered its own destruction hit a little too close to home. The hubris of the Atlanteans was now our hubris. Their cataclysm was a preview of our potential future, a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked technological power and political brinksmanship. And what about today? We're facing our own set of global crises, aren't we? Climate change, political polarization, social inequality, and the rapid, often unsettling pace of technological change. Look around. The parallels are hard to ignore. We see a world grappling with environmental disaster caused by our own actions, rising sea levels, extreme weather events. Isn't that just a slow-motion version of Atlantis sinking beneath the waves? We see societies divided by wealth and power, where the gap between the haves and have-nots grows wider every day. Plato's description of a once egalitarian society corrupted by greed and a lust for empire feels eerily familiar. The Atlanteans wanted to conquer the known world. Today, we see nations and corporations vying for global dominance, often at a great human and environmental cost. The story pattern is the same. A society reaches a peak of technological and social complexity, but its moral compass begins to fail. The very systems designed to create prosperity become the instruments of its potential downfall. This is the core of why Atlantis still haunts us. It's not a one-time prophecy about a specific event that happened or will happen. It's a recurring pattern, a cycle that humanity seems to be stuck in. The story of Atlantis is the story of civilization itself, the rise, the peak, the corruption, and the fall. It is a timeless narrative about the tension between our potential for greatness and our capacity for self-destruction. Every time we read about a new climate report, every time we see social unrest fueled by inequality, every time we worry about artificial intelligence or geopolitical conflict spiraling out of control, we are living out a modern version of the Atlantis myth. We are the advanced civilization standing on the precipice, blessed with incredible knowledge and power, yet flirting with disaster. We have the ability to build a utopia, but we also have the ability to tear it all down in a single day and night of misfortune. So the question isn't, where is Atlantis? The real question is, are we Atlantis? Are we the generation that finally learns from the story that breaks the cycle of hubris and self-destruction? Or are we destined to become another cautionary tale for future generations to puzzle over? The legend of Atlantis will endure as long as humanity itself endures, because it's our story. It's a reflection of our greatest achievements and our deepest fears. It persists because we keep making the same mistakes, forgetting the lessons of the past. Perhaps the search for Atlantis isn't about finding a physical place on a map. Maybe the real quest is an internal one, a search for the wisdom to avoid its fate. The story will only lose its power when we finally prove that we can be better than the mythical civilization we can't stop talking about. Thanks for watching. If this got you thinking, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. See you next time.